Hi,
Hello,
hello.
folks. Nice place you have here.
Oh, yeah. Well, hello. My name's Ezra. This is John. We're going. I feel kind of delightfully off balance right now. I think this idea was proposed to me about 3 days ago. And luckily, I had spent my lifetime preparing to talk to you, John. So I'm ready. You ready?
Shoot.
Okay. I want to tell you. Okay, so I think I'm a songwriter. You're a songwriter. I've been thinking lately of songwriting as very analogous to dreaming. You know, you kind of take in stuff, it combines in odd ways, and you find something emerging from you that seems like it's out of your control. About 1 year ago, I was finishing up working on a record, and somehow, as these things do, I heard an album of yours called Fear, which I had not heard before. And particularly the opening track, Fear is a Man's Best Friend. It did this thing where it got into I got obsessed with it. I got stuck on it, like it had something to tell me as an artist or something. You know, it kind of felt like somebody else's dream had entered my head. So I wanted to ask you two things about that. Number one, has that ever happened to you? A sort of obsession with a particular piece that seems like it's got a message, perhaps a message in code for you.
Yeah, there are phrases that pop out from songs. The one guy that always used to do it was Bob Dylan. And, you know, there were periods there where I was really worried about him because he was getting inside so many people's heads. Like after Positively 4th Street, there was a period where he was writing songs that were right. And I remember that a friend of his told me that somebody told Bob once when he was in a limo with him that, you know, you better stop writing songs like this because they're getting inside people's heads. Somebody's going to do something, man.
Yeah.
Just sheer paranoia. And Bob
Like
said, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And he got out of the car and walked away, which is really the proper way to deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to have this cloud. But apart from that, I mean, there are phrases that I found in books. I mean, there's certain things. Always Michael Ondaatje would do it. I mean, if I ran out of ideas for lyrics, I'd grab the English Patient and just a couple of pages, and I'd be right in there.
Yeah.
And it was great, you know, being inspired like that. And he's not the only one. I mean, there's Rob Grier, who has that book called Repetition, and it's a book written from the point of view of someone who is you can't depend on this narrator. This is the undependable narrator writing here. He'll tell you one thing 1 minute, and then in the middle of the next page, you say, wait a minute, you just told me. But that's kind of nice. I mean, I like that confusion and misleading because, you know, from a lazy songwriter's point of view, you're not responsible for all of it. You're just throwing it in the mix and watching it churn. So, does that answer your question?
Well, yeah. The thing about phrases is like resonating with me, because to me, phrases have always been the key thing that sort of fires my imagination and gets me going on writing something. Some phrase will just arrive or a lot of times I'll just mishear something, maybe from
They're
a
the
different
best.
song.
They're the best.
Yeah, yeah. Mishearing song lyrics.
Yeah.
It's like a little slip of the mind leads into opens a whole doorway,
Yeah.
and you've got something, you know. Uh, yeah, and I guess I just also wanted to ask you about that song specifically. I mean, I was in a state with that song. I don't know if this ever happens to you.
That song was in a state.
Yeah.
I mean, that's paranoia. It's shit, you know.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's also sort of got a point to it that makes you want to not turn away from it, but to really grab it and grab it, and you know, it's. So the biggest, I mean, I understand that process. I understand how it works and all that, but the one about the unreliable narrator is a much bigger thing to worry about, because fake news is around, and there's
Yeah.
really something that you don't want to meddling with, you know, because you're undermining the epistemology of a language,
Yeah.
and that's you better have good reasons for doing that, or at least be good at putting it back together afterwards, because if you're not, you're leaving people out in the lurch with nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, especially with that warning someone was giving to Bob Dylan, it seems like
It was
China.
done. He's the best friend of his, and
Yeah.
it was him, you know, who always said, and he was saying, "Yeah, man, you know." And but that's fine. I mean, but they're both friends. They're still friends.
Yeah.
We're still friends.
I mean, it makes me think of Charles Manson on the White Album, you know, and
That still spooks me out.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand how people get into that sort of relationship. But knowing what went on, you know, with Terry Melcher and the people around, and how they were really kind of embedded in the culture of Hollywood at the time. I mean, these guys knew everybody who was making anything. I mean,
Right.
directing, you know, these
Yeah,
were
friends with the-
accomplished people that were
Yeah.
part of all of that. And all of a sudden you get this group of 6 of them, and they've just been slaughtering people left and right. And that's, not that I'm saying there's anything new, but it was something new to me, because I suddenly realized, wait a minute, this is the Hollywood, I know some of these people that, and
right.
and then you start feeling responsible for not realizing it.
Yeah. See, I don't know. Can you hold? I mean, I don't think you can hold an artist responsible for somebody taking their art and like weaving it into their
No,
dark dream.
Absolutely. No, I mean, what I meant
Yeah.
was that I watched this happening, and I didn't realize how deep it was, and
Yeah.
I should have realized how deep it was.
Yeah.
So, you know, in my impenetrable ignorance here, you know, I just start feeling responsible. It's good to have a, you know, a sense of morality and stuff about what you do, and not be afraid of like calling people out on this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you know, there's a limit to that too, because you know, if it happened miles away from you or years apart, then there's no point in it. You know.
Right.
But I guess you know, part of that is I tend to feel responsible for that ignorance, and that, you know, that ignorance is important.
What ignorance? Like the ignorance of
The ignorance of not knowing.
not realizing that you're messing with people's heads when you make art.
That's a different question altogether.
Oh.
But it's a very good angle on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are messing with people's heads.
Oh, they want you to closer to the mic.
Okay.
Got it. Am I audible? Are we basically audible?
Okay. Sorry about that.
I think we're both trying to forget that any of you are here.
Yeah.
So
No, we're focused.
yeah, we've got
We're on it. Yeah.
some business to take care of. I've got a very indistinct list of words here.
Go on and
yeah.
read them out.
Well, all right. The next word on the list is his fame. Because I'm kind of curious. It seems like a segue. We're talking about being a prominent person, and you can't control what an audience does with a piece of art. You can try to spin it your way, but they can spin it another way. So, well, yeah, and I think I used to want to be famous. It used to be a
Well,
concern.
you succeeded.
What's that?
You succeeded.
In a real small way. But whether I've succeeded or not, it's not. I don't lust for it like I used to. And you're kind of a level of fame. I mean, you got your name in some like history of 20th century art books and stuff like that. Probably. I don't know. I don't read such books. No. But
Thanks for mentioning me in it.
yeah, I wondered if you like it, if it helps.
It's part of what you do. It's part of your job.
Yeah.
And you have tools at your disposal that you've got to use, and use people's friendship, use people's hatred, use people's inquisitiveness. It really, you got to use the tools, because what you're doing is not in a vacuum. You're doing it anyway, and people are going to pay attention to it. I'm not saying that you need to swing it either way,
Yeah.
but you better be aware of that it's there. That's being swung this way or that way is going to happen to you, whether you like it or not. So I don't go chasing critics down the street because they got,
Right.
double entendre wrong.
Yeah. That's the right attitude. Yeah. I've come to like fear it. I guess I see it as a increased fame and success as like a useful tool. But I can remember a time, maybe 10 years ago, when it was like, that was the goal.
Yeah, you're right.
Legendhood or something, Let me tell you about me in high school.
Yeah.
I had these friends in high school. Punks.
Teddy boys, you mean?
Well, spiky hair,
Yeah.
safety
There you
pins,
go.
homemade song lyric T-shirts. And I was very drawn to this world of these
Yeah.
people, and not ready to join them, not ready to look like them.
You weren't ready to.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just was like,
Okay.
I'm not that thing. I don't have a uniform yet. We used to talk about the Velvet Underground. There was this ongoing conversation, what's the best Velvet Underground record? I personally, at age 15, liked Loaded. I liked Loaded the best. These were hipper people than me. They like gently and firmly corrected me. And they were like, nah, that's barely a Velvet Underground album. And the real stuff is when John Cale is in the band, that's when it's... And I kind of realized they were devotees of you, and it was cool to be a fan of the Velvet Underground with John Cale in the band. Why did I bring this up?
You're in
I
high
guess-
school.
Yeah, I am interested in punks and punk, what it is exactly, and if you feel like it has anything to do with you. I mean, do you have a relationship to this? What's become obviously something that's far, beyond what you've done. It's become its own subculture, sort of a strand of art thought of its own, like romanticism. That's how large it's become. But I'm just curious what you think your relationship to to it is.
The funny thing is that I remember dancing on the stage of the local cinema in Garland in Wales when Rock Around the Clock came out. And a lot of fun. I went in and, wow, what's this? And Bill Haley and all the dancing going on. And we all just got up and danced on the stage. And that was kind of my first, because I knew that somebody was going to say, these guys are behaving like punks. But what in the local, the ladies of the district, they were quite amused by it all. They thought, wow, this is a lot of fun. It's so silly. And it's like, but, you know, the kind of the Marlon Brando kind of punk didn't really come about until later, and it only came about on the screen. But in London and in the music, you know, it's really, if you take a lot of speed and you can't play guitar very well, you end up with something really interesting.
Yeah.
And everybody learned from that. Everybody just picked up on it and enjoyed it. I mean, so those guys that you were with in high school, I mean, they're the most interesting guys in high school, I bet.
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
And so finding those outliers, as they're called nowadays, is very important.
Yeah. What do you...
I mean, when I was in college, I would go to Soho and hang out with a lot of people that were in the art world and in acting, and a predominantly gay scene that to me was really the most interesting creative group around. I mean, I was in Goldsmiths, but where I really got my ideas from were these guys, these artists, and then I slowly started noticing that all these people were everywhere. They were in Europe, and I always, because of the art background that I had, I always checked out that these guys are from Stockhausen's group in Darmstadt, or they're from the French group. And so when I got to New York, I had a sense of lineage for almost everything. I mean, you know, the music, when I worked with the, I was well aware that there were certain things that we should be avoiding. And that's a good rubric to have, because you don't tell anybody what that is. You just go ahead and do your thing, and you have a path.
Right.
And finding groups that will do that. I'm sure there are groups like this, you know, if they're not in China, they will be soon. You know, and in Tajikistan, and I hope they come out of Xinjiang province. I mean, because those people need it. I mean, the Uyghurs and, you know, people, they need a language. They need a language of emotion more than anything.
Yeah.
Because they're throwing people in camps over there and just shattering their minds.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate about today that everything gets almost everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but culture is so transportable. I guess what I'm talking about is the internet.
Yeah. Doesn't guarantee that the same thing happens, though.
Right, when it gets to a different place.
Because you gotta make sure the emotion is there.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. I don't know if this was part of the plan, but somebody mentioned asking the audience if they had any questions for us.
yes.
For you, for me. So maybe we should do it. I don't know, I'm improvising. First one to raise his hand is in a gold top hat at the back
Very
of the
stylish.
field. You might have to be...
Who should we go and watch tonight?
brutal. Cutting right to the hardest.
Booyah.
I'll give you a tip. I think I start playing 20 minutes or half an hour before John does. If you don't, first of all, we'll put the good stuff toward the beginning. But if you don't like it, you really ought to treat yourself to John Cale. Even if you do like it, I'm a little bit heartbroken. I have not gotten a chance to see you perform live. I would have really liked to. So make sure to put it on YouTube or something for me if you can. Actually, don't do that. Just watch it. I don't know. Next.
Sorry, I'm curious about the Velvet Underground and what that was like, the atmosphere, or what you were thinking, or what it was like at that time.
It's a common question. What was it like being in the...
Physically.
As New York is very filthy. It was dirty. It was steam coming up out of the streets. Still is, but I mean, then it was... When I think back on those days, how dirty and everything. It was like, everybody looked like a roadie. I love you, roadies. I'm sorry?
What's your favorite song that you've written and why?
Oh, the last one is called Hatred. It's about Cochise and a blind painter and painting what they did in those. It kind of revolves around the idea of what Cochise did for his vacation. When he was out killing gringos.
Mm.
I've got a question. When you left the Velvet Underground, you took a number of key choices personally about where your career would go. Ezra is in a position where he's got to make potentially some choices in his own individual personal life about where he wants to go with his music. What would be your piece of advice to Ezra to keep him on the tracks?
Well,
Yeah,
let me repeat the question just for people who didn't hear it. I think it was when you left the Velvet Underground. Wait, I totally lost it.
No, you want to know what I did? How did I keep going after leaving the Velvet Underground?
And does he have any advice for
Yeah.
Lil Ol' Me?
I think that choice. I think he's made that choice, though. I think he's already made that choice, and it's pretty clear. And so all we can do is sit and wait and watch.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I wonder if at that time you faced am I in this? Am I a lifer as a musician and performer, or do I go do something else now?
No,
Yeah.
To be honest, I knew early on there's very little else I could do. I mean, I was interested in politics, but I couldn't give up music long enough to really be able to do anything else.
Yeah.
So, captive audience of one.
You've always got that one.
Do you have to like to be creative in order to can you hear me?
No.
Do you have to like what you created in order to perform it? Or do you ever just perform it sometimes because you spent so long creating it and you feel too attached to it even if it's not what you want to do? Does that make sense?
Good question.
Yeah. Do you have to like what you're performing, or do you sometimes just have to perform it because you've put in the time and you're committed to it?
What do you think?
I mean, the thing is, I think you want to have a baseline sense that what you've done is good. You don't have to always feel in the mood to perform it. I mean, it's like, well, I'm somebody who's interested in prayer. And I say prayers that are the same all the time, and if you want to do something like that ritually and in a disciplined way, you can't stop because you're not in the mood. You try to come to it and see if it can be alive as you know it has been at some point. Can you enter your old work? And sometimes you just can't, and that's when you stop playing it. That's you take it off the set list.
It's a good answer. No, well, as an example, tonight I'm going to be doing Fear, and I got to the point where I really didn't want to play it anymore, and so I rewrote it. So it's got different,
Yeah.
So every now and again, you see it in the set list and say, "Oh no." So then you use the sound check and you rewrite it, but that's kind of the raison d'etre for my keeping going. Really, is I have a great bunch of musicians that respond, and it's always about improvisation. How can you come up with a new song, right on, and a lot of that went on. I mean, I get more out of making something up on stage out of nothing than doing the catalog. And I think people really appreciate it. I mean, if you're scared about doing that, or whoever it is not you, but people really, you want to grab their attention, show them you're scared.
Yeah. Do something you've never done before. Yeah,
Yeah.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
In the green T-shirt.
Do you look at your material as a method of escapism for the listener? So to
Yeah.
escape their
Yeah.
ordinary life.
Yeah.
Or do you look at it from your point of view?
Do we look at our work as a method of escapism for a listener? To escape.
So that puts us in the position of being both the listener and the creator. And really, how does that work out in the general plan of things? I mean,
What do you mean both?
both being a listener and the creator. I mean, your critical faculties are really there all the time. And can you repeat that question again? I just want to get
So when you make
Yeah.
a body of work,
escapism.
do you look at that as are you looking at it simply from your point of view, or do you look at that ever as a form of escapism for the listener, so it
Yeah.
can take the listener somewhere else? So they listen to them, they can come out of their ordinary lives and then use that as a form of escapism.
Yes. Well, the answer is totally.
Yeah. It's actually, I find music and art useful for a lot of things. I've used it. Escapism sometimes feels like what I'm doing when listening to music, especially in a dark mood or in pain. There's also something that goes on a lot listening to music that is sort of the opposite of that, which it sort of brings you back to your life. You've sort of escaped into... One of the best things I think that listening to music does is like it takes the present moment and you're like, this is happening now. It kind of... I don't know. It's a thing that's a bit beyond words, but it puts you back in your life and reminds you that life is vivid and emotional. And I have the habit, and I can't tell if it's a good perspective, of just always thinking about what might happen in the mind of somebody listening to what I'm making, and it's not for me. I only have to like it as much as it takes to get me to finish it. I dream of, that. I know that listening to records is a very mutual experience. The record's not great until somebody hears it and something happens in their brain and suddenly it's in the air. I don't know. What's the time, may I ask?
4:30.
I'm not worried about it. That's a classic wrap it up motion. I didn't think of like some kind of elegant ending for this event.
No, I mean, we are what we are. I mean, his gentleman was asking a question.
Let's do a last question, yeah, please.
I just wanted to know, did you really attack Brian Eno with chopsticks?
With what?
Chopsticks.
Did you really attack Brian Eno with chopsticks?
Please, that's not the way to end this.
That's
I mean,
not.
really.
That ain't it. Wait, one more try.
Yeah.
In the striped shirt, the young lady. Who's playing on this stage? Next? Oh, who's next? I don't know who's next. Who do we have next? Jonathan Wilson at 6:30 to give us all some relief from this self-conscious patter. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for the question.
That was me. What a pleasure. Have a good show.